Hello, everybody. My name is Hannah Hostick. I'm co-president of the Friends of the Stirling Road Library. It is my pleasure to welcome you this evening to our cinema series. As you will be able to tell, we are very excited. Shelly just reminded us that we've been trying to get him into our library for about 10 years. So we are thrilled that tonight's the night. Please make sure that your mics are off so that there is no disturbance during the meeting. And I want everyone to know that we are recording this program. So if you miss anything, you can watch the recording. And if you miss any of the other in the series, you can also watch it. We'll record each time. This week is a busy week at the library. In the next few weeks, I just want to quickly go through some of the programs. Thursday at 7, Emmanuel Abramovitz is talking about piano virtuosos. Last week at Emmanuel's lecture, one of the conductors that he was discussing just willy-nilly showed up at the lecture. We were all very shocked, and it was really special. I urge you, if you love music, come by. We have a book discussion with Linda Levin on August 17th, The Girl with Louding Voice. Robert Watson returns with a series, Heroes of History, on August 25th. The first lecture is Truman and Israel, Behind the Scenes. I'll let you know a secret. I think Truman was in favor of the state of Israel, but whatever. Okay, anyway, Batya Cohen returns in October with more great works deconstructed. And if you get used to coming on Wednesday nights to something and you want to join us for the New Yorker discussion group, please feel free. It's a great group of people who come together to discuss pertinent articles and fiction from the New Yorker magazine. With no further ado, I'd like to introduce Marilyn London, who is the chairperson of our membership. Marilyn.
Hi, everybody. Welcome. As membership chairman, I really would like to thank all of our friends of the Stirling Road Library this evening, because it is because of your loyalty and your support that we are able to provide the best programs possible. And we really pride ourselves in our level of excellence at the programs that we have for you in all areas. So welcome. And I also noticed that there are several guests here tonight, and we absolutely welcome you, and we hope that you enjoy the evening. And we also hope that you too will become a friend. It's $10 a year to have access to all of our phenomenal programs. And to quote Jackie, and I know you're in it with us tonight, Jackie, she says it's the best bargain in town, and she's right. So please check us out at sterlingfriends.org. I think you're going to like what you see, and I encourage you all to become friends and have access to all of the things that we do. It is my pleasure to introduce our guest lecturer, Shelly Isaacs, to you. I believe you've all read his bio in the newsletter, and after today's program entitled Once in a Lifetime, you'll understand why he is considered our tri-county expert critic on foreign films. We have been persistent in getting Shelly to be on board with us, and we are so delighted when he finally said yes. So please make sure that you are all on mute. This is our introductory and our initial meeting. So what we're going to ask you to do is, if you have any comments or questions, you could put them in the chat, and at the end, and we will deal with them when the time comes. And if there are questions that you want to ask Shelly at the end of his presentation, you'll have the opportunity to do so then. So without any further ado, Shelly, take it away. It's all yours.
Thank you, Marilyn. First of all, I want to thank Marilyn and Hannah. They did keep after me. And as I was telling Marilyn, just before, Hannah finally compelled me to do it. She kidnapped my dog. She put a gun to its head and said, I better do the film or else. So I'm here. And I also see some familiar names out there, Arlette and Wendy Rothfield. Hi, it's great to see you. This is a thrill, and I welcome you all. And before I get into the film Once in a Lifetime tonight, I want to do something that I do generally with my classes and my audiences. For those of you who don't know me, is just to get you there's you can call them a tool, a theory that I use that'll help you, that'll enrich your experience and your appreciation of film. I believe that one of the greatest tools we do have in sharing different cultures, as with foreign language film, and morality and the lessons of life, is storytelling. And in this world, in our modern world, great storytelling is what great cinema is all about. And cinema connects us with stories that reveal emotional truths, that reflect who we are, no matter where we are in the world. We can make a connection. I can go on and on about the value of film as an art form, how film has evolved through the advancement of production techniques, and how film provides us with infinite ways to explore the world and realize the value of other cultures as well as our own. And to simplify our understanding and appreciation of film, I would like to focus on what I consider the basics. I call them the 3 R's: resonance, relevance, and revelation. Now, resonance is the ability to evoke or suggest images, memories, and emotions. That's our definition. And I want you to think of a tuning fork. As a tuning fork vibrates at a particular pitch when you strike it against the hard surface, and it emits a pure tone that musicians can use to tune their instruments, think of yourself as a tuning fork. And that when watching a film, something, a scene, a look, dialogue, an action can strike a chord within you, and you resonate. It resonates with you. And that's what we call resonance. And then there's relevance, the quality closely connected in film that can mean how an event or a scene can connect events in your own life, whether they relate to history, social, religious, or political issues. There's a relevance there. There should be a relevance. Movies affect many of us powerfully because the combined impact of images, music, dialogue, lighting, sound, special effects, editing, they can elicit deep feelings and help us reflect on our lives. They can help us to better understand our own lives, the lives of those around us, even how our society and culture operate. When a film remains non-political or non-controversial as possible, it risks being irrelevant. It risks being irrelevant. So we have relevance. And then finally, revelation. A surprising and previously unknown fact, especially when it is made known in a dramatic way, is revelation, something that will come out in the film that will surprise you, reveal something that other characters don't see. Some of the most crucial scenes in cinema come when that important information is revealed. This key information can be learned at the same time the character learns it. It can be revealed to us before the character finds out, or we may discover it after the character already knows. Regardless of how we find out, a good revelation scene is not just about the moment when the twist occurs, when things are revealed and surprise ensues, but also about what leads up to that scene. If characters are developed properly and the information is withheld until the right moment in the plot, bam, you have a revelation. So if you keep in mind and apply these 3 R's, resonance, relevance, and revelation, it should enhance your experience with cinema. So with that, I will get into our film, and I will at times, reference those 3 R's for you. So it's very important to understand. Okay, Once in a Lifetime. Once in a Lifetime. The French title, by the way, is Les Héritiers, The Heirs, which is an even more relevant title. It's 2014. It was directed by a young woman. Her name is Marie Castille-Mention-Char. Marie Castille-Mention-Char. She's only directed 2 or 3 films. This was her first big film. And it was shot on location. The film was shot entirely on location, especially at that school, the Leon Blum School. Leon Blum, for those of you who may not know, was a president of France prior to World War II. And the Leon Blum School is located in a suburb of Paris called Créteil. It's a cosmopolitan suburb comprised of second-generation immigrant families who came from many French colonies, which is what explains the makeup of that class. It is a diverse population of many ethnicities and religions: Jewish, Muslim, Catholic. You have Protestant. You have a whole gamut. You run a whole gamut of people. And this film, which is based on a true story, the film chronicles the relationship between the teacher and the teenagers in that school. And faced with her own students' own prejudices toward other religions and ethnicities, we see that at the beginning, how they pick on one another, call each other names that they don't even realize the meaning of, and how it impacts on each one of them. She manages to convince them to take part in a collective project about the Holocaust, an experience that will enlighten them because it's something they really have no knowledge of. I mean, we all can wonder, how could people not have a knowledge of the Holocaust? Well, we know here too that there are deniers, that there are people who would not want to admit to it and lie about it. In interviews during the year, now this goes back to 2012, or actually 2014, in interviews during that year, when the film was released in France and around the world, where it did win many awards, Marie Castille-Mention-Char, she said, with recent events, now you want to talk about relevance, with recent events, the majority of French people and politicians have realized how urgent this matter of intolerance has become. This film speaks clearly about the challenge that schools face today in teaching the principles of secularism, freedom of expression, and the difficulty yet necessity to transmit historical heritage and victims' memories across generations. And that's something that applies here. It's something that applies here. It should apply everywhere. Ultimately, this film, with its subplots that include confrontations, class and religious differences, developing relationships, becomes an ode to teachers and to tolerance within a classroom that can be looked at as a battleground. And while it is not specifically a Holocaust film, it is a testament to the lessons to be learned from this dark period of history and the enduring impact of the Holocaust toward transforming future generations, something that must be observed by every country. And this is true, especially in France's case, because just as a side note, when I was doing research on this film, when I first began to show it, over the years, many of the French have learned how not to come to terms with France's complicity with the occupying Nazi forces. The underlying theme of when they go to the Holocaust Museum and they look at the pictures of children, and the theme of the competition that they enter into, which I'll get into in a minute, about the children and teenagers in the Holocaust, the appearance of books over time on the subject and a few films that have been produced about it created a lot of debate in France, but it rarely forced official reaction. The government never really spoke about it. However, in 1995, it was Jacques Chirac, who opened the door to the truth. And he said he felt it was time to finally talk to the country's collective guilt when it came especially to what was known as the Vel d'Hiv. The Vel d'Hiv happened in July 1942. It was a gathering of over 13,000 Jews in the Velodrome in Paris. 4,000 of them were children. 4,000 of them were children. And most of these people perished. And finally, Francois Hollande in 2012 made clear, or actually 2014, made clear that the Veldiv was entirely a French operation. Not one German soldier was involved, he told the French people, that the French were completely complicit and the Germans didn't even need to be involved. And while some films want to portray reality as it is, others, like this one, ultimately combine what has actually happened with the desire to portray how teaching can open that door to understanding what the world can be. We see through both exploring the collective of the students, as well as some of their individual stories, how empathy, one of the most powerful emotions we can have with film and our attachment with film, how empathy and the power of history transforms these students and helps them to make sense of current events, of what's happening now in France, in the United States, in Germany, many countries around the world. The opening scene immediately draws us into the story on a contentious note. For those of you who remember, it illustrates the difficulties between two strong principles that are all too familiar to us: freedom of expression and secularism. If you remember, the young woman who comes in with her mother to get her diploma expresses that throughout her school life, she respected the secular law by removing her hijab before entering school. Yet in France, there are no laws that necessarily protect the secular school. As we see, we see the teacher or administrator arguing, when she says, I am not a student anymore. She says, but you're here to get your diploma and you still have to adhere to the law of the school. And that fight ensues and opens up that whole idea for us, which is reiterated throughout the film, the idea of secularism versus, religion. And, we have Madame Gauguin, when she teaches school, the main character, when she's teaching school, she invokes religious themes to the students. If you remember, she brings in heaven and hell. She shows them icons in the church. She talks about the final judgment, about Calvinism. And she says, because she says, no image is ever innocent. No image is ever innocent. Now, I don't know if you know this, but the three most important symbols in the world, not important, but the three most recognizable symbols in the world today, or have been, are the crucifix, the cross, the Star of David, and get ready for it, the Nazi symbol. The Nazi symbol is one of the most recognizable symbols in the world. I mean, it invokes hate, it invokes, fear, but the swastika is one of the most recognizable symbols in the world, one of the three. And the film itself, with its semi-documentary feel, which adds to its authenticity, the classroom scenes are what I call exercises in controlled chaos. Exercises in controlled chaos, which is brought to an abrupt halt when later on in the film, which I will get back to, when the students listen firsthand to the real life experience of Leon Ziegel, who makes his presentation, who survived the Holocaust and was deported to the camps at 15. And as the film unfolds for us, we see how this unruly class, under the guidance and teaching of Madame Gauguin, eventually, and I will tell you her real name later on, Madame Gauguin, eventually comes together, collaborating on that project that will unite them in understanding how the past informs their present. The project is called the Concours National de la Résistance de la Déportation, the National Federation of Deported and Imprisoned Resistance Fighters and Patriots. It was founded in 1945, 5 months after the defeat of Nazi Germany. It carries a legacy of those who perished in the concentration camps from France or were interned in prisons in occupied France, and unites the survivors of the camps, the prisons, and the French resistance. The Federation also researches and exposes Nazi war crimes. They're still doing it to this day. The competition was created first in 1961 by the National Education Minister and the Federation itself to provide students with an opportunity to meet resistance members and deportees face to face, establishing a link between the generations. It also prompts middle and high school students to question themselves concerning the values of the French Republic and democracy, and to measure their relevance and modernity. In 2011, the year represented in this film, the theme was exploring the lives of children and teens who were deported to the Nazi concentration camps. As the film moves along, the focus remains on the kids as a whole as we watch it. You know, we see their day-to-day experience. There are dissenters, there are confrontations, and there are even threats. Remember the young girl, the young Muslim girl, those boys who attack her in the hallway for the way she's dressed. Again, that whole argument between secularism and religion. Madame Guégan eventually towards, the last third of the film fades into the background a little as the students take center stage and they seize and appropriate their own stories. Through the stories they learn about the Holocaust, they begin to relate. The stories resonate with them, and there is revelation in the stories they read, and there is revelation when they visit the Holocaust Center. There is a tremendous amount of revelation there for these kids, because they go, as they walk in, they're joking, they're smiling, they see the names of the concentration camps outside, they have no idea what they represent. But once they encounter it, they encounter the pictures, they encounter the names, they put names to faces, and then finally meeting Leon Zagiel, it all resonates with them, and it is a great revelation. And although when they eventually come together in the film, remember, to do the project, if you remember, only 2 students shows up at the beginning of the project when Madame Guégan and her assistant walk in. And when they do, it's the librarian she walks in with. And when they do, she's only 2, all of a sudden, they all start piling in. Why? Because if you remember the scene previous to that, Madame Guégan was in a teacher conference and she defended the students. She said, when the principal said, these students are going nowhere, why do you choose this project? And she says why, because you can't discount any student. And she feels this is very important for them. It will bring them together. And they show up. They all show up and they're ready to take on the project, except for one. That one student who becomes a Muslim, and how Malik, the young Black boy, says to him, "You weren't a Muslim last week and you're accosting me for not going to the center." So we see that one. And even he at the end, reaches out. And there's humor in the film. I don't want to ignore the humor in the film. If you remember that great scene when Malik goes to help out Mrs. Levy, who lives in that banlieue, in that project, and she's got a parrot. He's going to look after Elvis, the parrot. And what does the parrot say? Shabbat shalom, Shabbat shalom. She's got a parrot. And so we get a little humor injected, but he's helping out. This Jewish woman, he helps her out. In fact, so much so that if you remember towards the end, he's out at the mailboxes and they put on her mailbox, they wrote "Dirty Jew," and he takes out his cologne and he erases it on the mailbox. And Mrs. Levy walks by just afterwards and she's taking the mail out and she says, Malik has to stop wearing so much perfume. there are these little humorous moments that are reality for us. And although, and they're told, and this is another interesting comment made during the film, don't learn history, understand it. Don't learn it, understand it. Those words are so important, and they resonate with us. They resonate with these kids as they embark on this project. When they begin, and when they begin to bond, they're off to a rough start. And, even Madame Gauguin, and one of them suggests that kid Theo, he was the one who doesn't talk through most of the film. He says, maybe we're not up to it. Maybe we're just not up to it. And they all look at him, and, they're told, and that's the point. Madame Gauguin, from that point, says, maybe you should learn from what he's saying. Use your voice as a child, not as a student. You are a child. You are a child of today. Speak as a child the way these children during the Holocaust spoke, what they're sending to us here in their future. We hear them discuss Anne Frank. They discuss Primo Levi. They discuss Schindler's List. They discuss the book, A Child in Auschwitz, written by Maurice Kling, and others pop up during the course of their studies. We know them, now they know them. The two scenes in the film that define their changes in attitude, we call them defining moments in a narrative. The two defining moments in the film that best represent their transformation, when they visit the Holocaust Memorial and Museum, and Leon Ziegel's presentation to the class. The first one, when they're at the museum, they come face to face, as I said, with the Holocaust and France's role. By seeing the individuals their own age, they're struck by the reality of how it could be them. How it could be them. They could become subject to this. And when they're exiting the museum, I hope you remember that beautiful moment when Malik sees the balloons flying up to the sky. And he looks and he's touched by it, he smiles. But I want you to think about what the camera does at that moment. It comes back down to Malik and it focuses on that sculpture with all the concentration camp names on it. It's almost as if the director is saying to us, how can there be beauty in the face of such horror? How can there be, and that was said after the Holocaust by many poets and philosophers. How could there be beauty in the face of such horror? And, he remembers those balloons and he reflects on those balloons. And at the end, we see those balloons again. They start releasing the balloons, if you remember, as a remembrance for each person they have traced from the Holocaust. And then we have that second moment, which is Leon Ziegel's testimony. He becomes the major catalyst for their transformation. His appearance in the film speaks totally at that moment to the truth. So much so, he speaks movingly about his ordeal as a 15-year-old, the same age they are. He talks about his experience at the same age. And the scene is rendered simply and effectively, cutting back and forth between the faces of Leon and the class. And we see their somber reactions. Some of them are crying, some of them just staring, revealing how the Holocaust still resonates on faces far removed from its moment, from its horrors. And I have to tell you, that scene, it couldn't be more truthful because it was shot in one take. It was shot in one take with 3 cameras. Mentian Shar, the director, did not want to take advantage of Leon. He was 85 years old at the time. And he was a little infirm. And as you saw, when she walks in, she helps him in. And she instructed all the actors, the kids, who were all, except for one, amateurs, she instructed them to just listen to Leon and not think of it as part of a film. Think of it as part of your life now. His speech was the same he delivers everywhere in France, that he delivered everywhere in France he visits. And their reactions were nothing less than honest, nothing less than honest. And as a result of that moment, when it really happened, and what is reflected in the recreation of it, it changed both the students and the actors, the people who portrayed them. It changed their lives. It changed their lives. They all reflected on that moment as being a life changer for them. And of course, the final scenes at the presentation of the project, when they make, when they're given the awards, and finally the picnic, provide that sense of accomplishment and fulfillment after a journey inspired by their teacher, which now leads me to the genesis of this film, what inspired it. Now, here comes some major revelations for you. The film is inspired by a true story, as I said, by one of the students who was now the real teacher's name was Anne Anglaise, who was in her class during the term when they participated and won that national contest. The student's name is Andre Drame. If you read the credits, the film was written by Andre Drame, but he also played Malik. He played Malik in the film. He was the star of the film. When he wrote the film, he was 16 years old. He wrote this screenplay when he was 16 years old. He contacted the director, but it was through a series of circumstances that he was able to get in touch with Marie Castile-Betienne Shaw. She was in New York at the time, and she called him up when it was sent to her, and she called him up and she told him she liked his story so much, she decided to work with him to develop the screenplay. So she co-wrote it with Ahmed, and she wanted to bring it a more heartfelt documentary style authenticity to the film because he wrote it as a story firsthand. So she shot the film in the actual classrooms where it took place, with that mix of amateur and professional actors. As she developed the story, she was particularly impressed and became absorbed by the life of a young French Muslim, meaning Ahmed Drame, who plays Malik. He's Muslim, but so passionate about film. If you remember, he's studying film during the course of the film, and that's something he did do in his real life. But with cinema, his history and his desires to do something with his life. This was a kid from what is known as the Banlieue, from the projects, who wanted to do something with his life. All of it attributed he attributed to his teacher and to the director. She located Madame Anglais. She went out, she found her. She had since left the school, and she was at first surprised that one of her students was still so influenced by that year. Nobody had ever gotten in touch with her. So she was still, so influenced by, she was still impressed. And the director found her to be a benevolent authority over her classes. She demanded respect from the students, which she got, and they were frightened to have her as a teacher, but ultimately sad to leave her in the end. And Marie Castile also learned from the teacher, from Anglais, as well as from she attended 10th grade classes in different towns around France, that dealing with that constant hubbub of cell phones, of that, what I call that controlled chaos and contentious behavior, make a teacher just another element to deal with, which is reflected in the film. They ignore the teacher. If you remember, there's a scene where a substitute comes in and they reduce her to tears. Anne Anglais opened the students' eyes to search and realize that they themselves were children and grandchildren of adults who have their own history, whether they come from Morocco, whether they come from Tunis, whether they come from Germany, or whether they come from France. They each have a history, their parents, their grandparents. And if these kids ignore that history, they will wind up living careless lives. This is what she imparted to those classes. Now, the star of the film who portrays Madame Guégan, her name is Ariane Ascaride, and she is a very popular actress in France, an award-winning actress, married to a director. In spite of all her award-winning performances, and I could tell you there are quite a few critically acclaimed performances, she felt that this was definitely one of her best, thanks to the director and the student actors who developed a deep trust in her as their teacher, both on and off the screen. She not only taught them what was going on in the film, but also how to act. She also taught them how to act in the film. And as well as Ahmed Drameh, who plays Malik, the only other actor among the students was the young woman who plays Melanie. Her name is Noémie Merlan. She plays that pretty rebellious student, and she is transformed by a story, which I'll tell you about in a minute. But if some of you are familiar with a film entitled Portrait of a Lady on Fire, which came out of France 2 years ago, she starred in the film. She has now become one of France's most popular actresses. She also starred in a film for this director, the next film that this director did, and she loves controversy and dealing with social issues. This actress, this beautiful actress, portrays a transgender man who decides, because she's still a woman when she's not completely transgender, she still has the plumbing. She decides that the woman she's married with, because they want to have a child, she carries the child and conceives it. She carries the child and conceives it, even though she's a transgender man. A film which did very well in France, by the way. And Leon Ziegel, who makes the speech, who had been in Auschwitz and Buchenwald and helped to liberate, other prisoners after the war, he was instrumental in the conviction of a man named Maurice Papon, who was the Secretary General of the Bordeaux region of France during the war, and was responsible for arresting and deporting the Jews from Bordeaux in 1942. And he tracked him down, caught him, and was responsible for bringing him to justice. He was brought to justice, and he was in prison, sentenced to prison, and he died in prison. And in 2010, Leon Ziegel was named a Knight in the National Order of the Legion of Honor of France. Unfortunately, he passed away in 2015 at the age of 87. And there is another character in the film who was not there. It is that woman that I said transforms, Melanie. If you remember, she's reading a book. She comes home, her mother is an alcoholic, she's passed out on a chair. She picks up a book and she starts to read it, because while she's reading the book, the same character from the book is on the TV screen. Her name was Simone Weil. Simone Weil, who was a survivor of the camps. Simone Weil, who we see being honored on a TV screen in actual footage. She was a survivor also of Auschwitz and Birkenau. In fact, she grew up to serve as the Minister of Health for France, and was instrumental in the passage of legalizing abortion in 1975, of banning smoking in public places in 1976, as well as becoming a member of the Constitutional Council of France in 1998. And when she passed away in 2017, she was honored by becoming only the 5th woman in history to become interred in the Pantheon of France, the Pantheon itself. And it instituted what is known as the Simone Weil Prize, awarded in honor of women's rights in France every year. And a little side note of the film, 20 out of 27 of those students who were in that class, in reality, all received what is known as their baccalaureate, graduating the 5th year of high school, and going on to college. If you're familiar with the French system, in your 5th year of high school, you're either awarded a baccalaureate, which allows you to go on to college, or you can go to a technical school, a vocational school. And 20 out of 27 of them, these were kids who were cast out. These were kids who the principal said will come to nothing, all wound up receiving their baccalaureates. And I don't know if you remember in the final scene, which I thought was another ironic little twist, when they're having that picnic in front of the Eiffel Tower. What were they eating? KFC. They were eating Kentucky Fried Chicken. They had the buckets there. I thought that was such an ironic little joke of what was going on. But I hope you all enjoyed this film. There is, so much embedded in it. The cinematography I thought was terrific. The use of handheld camera, the editing especially, capturing the faces in the film, the use of real footage combining with the film itself, and real characters naturally, but the lives of the certain students. We saw Malik's life outside with his family. We saw Melanie with her mother. We saw the young Jewish girl in the class who Malik likes. We saw that scene, and that was real, by the way. The guy who was standing there when they were playing soccer, he was real, and he was a friend of Malik's who played soccer with them when he asked him to come and play soccer. So there was this interplay of all these people in that community, and the film conveys it very well. But it's a film that should stay with you. We are not as closely related as these children were, as France is, who underwent these experiences. But if you want to look at films here where they teach kids about the Holocaust, what is it? It was the Paper Clips. There was a film done several years ago, a documentary called Paper Clips, where a school, I think it was either Alabama or Georgia, where students got together and started collecting paper clips. And each one, they wanted to collect, 6 million paper clips, each one representing a life that was lost in the Holocaust. And they also wound up getting a boxcar to represent the trains themselves. Probably the greatest film made about the Holocaust is Shoah. I don't know how many of you had the privilege of seeing it, and it is a film that should be seen. It is 8 hours long, as those of you who've seen it know, and you never really see a scene or a depiction of the Holocaust or pictures from the Holocaust. It is all told by survivors. And films of camps that exist as they do today. But yet that is so powerful to evoke those images. And that is probably the most important film you can see, as well as a film called The Sorrow and the Pity by a director known as Marcel Ophuls, who produced it in France. Also, it is about the trials that happened afterwards, and also about the camps themselves. So that's it. If you have any questions, are there any questions or comments in the chat? I will be glad to look in the chat and address them. I see one here. Someone's asking, if it isn't a Holocaust film, how do you define a Holocaust film? Well, Holocaust films, have become a genre almost unto themselves. And I define a Holocaust film as one that depicts the Holocaust itself, during those years between 1933 actually and 1945, 46. This can be part of what I call post-Holocaust, and I think post-Holocaust films are are separate from Holocaust films. Post-Holocaust films deal with what has happened since the Holocaust. You know, how have families dealt with it? And a lot of the great post-Holocaust films have come out of Germany and France, especially, that deal with that. Germany has done a slew of them. There is one that came out, it's about 2 or 3 years old, called Labyrinth of Lies. Labyrinth of Lies, which tells the true story of what were known as the Auschwitz trials. It's a fictional narrative, but it's told from one lawyer's point of view, who he himself learns about the Holocaust and through a survivor, and manages to launch the trials, to actually bring to trial those Nazis and collaborators who were at Auschwitz, who were at other places, other camps. And it was the first time, it wasn't until the 60s that this happened. So they're all films, and those are post-Holocaust films. So I break it up into 2 categories, Holocaust and post-Holocaust. That's how I do that. Okay, let's see. Now I want to watch the movie again. Thank you, Tracia. What happened to the Muslim girls who were denied? This is Bonnie Smith. What happened to the Muslim girls who were denied their baccalaureate because of their face covering? They weren't denied. That girl wasn't denied. She had a diploma. She just wasn't allowed in the school that day. She, you know, and the other kids, if you remember, when they came into the school during the day, the Jewish kids took off their yarmulkes, the Muslim kid took off their hijab. They could put it back on when they left, but they wanted them to all be equal within the school, because as Madame Guégan starts to say, these symbols, they invoke problems. And she, you know, this is why they do it. It was a way of explaining those things. Okay, let's see. How is the coming of age? Lynn Farber, thank you for your comment. It seems a coming of age film. Yes, it is very much a coming of age film. Thank you. As much as a post-Holocaust film, how interesting to link the coming of age of these adolescents with the coming of age of French society as it comes of age in its relationship to the Holocaust. Thank you. Yes, very astute. Is there a list of movies in my upcoming lectures? Yes, I will get into that in a moment. Okay, that seems to be it, unless there are others that'll come up. Okay, well, anybody who wants to write something in, you want to know what's going to be happening in the next few months. Okay, in September, the theme from here on in for films from now until December, and there's a number of them, will be the page to screen. From page to screen, I will be using films, foreign language films, that are adapted from other sources, either novels or plays primarily. And they reveal stories that will bring us into the lives and destinies of many, many memorable characters, shaped by their own personal conflicts, their cultural impact, and each film will have a cultural impact, and how culture impacts on them and the weight of historical events they lived through. We'll be seeing a film entitled A Fortunate Man from Denmark, based on a book that was responsible for winning a Nobel Prize for its author. It's about a young man in Denmark at the turn of the century and his experiences, not so much growing up, but coming to terms with his life. And it is an epic film. It is an epic film and a dazzling experience itself, fully realized. From there, we'll be going to Greece and a film entitled Little England, which is also adapted from a best-selling novel that spans the 1930s through World War II. Is a monumental story of 2 sisters in Greece, I'm sorry, in Greece. Then we move on to South Africa, to a film entitled Nowhere in Africa, also an Academy Award-winning film based on a novel. It won the Academy Award in 2002 for Best Foreign Language Film. And it's a story of a young girl coming of age in Africa after fleeing with her family from the Holocaust in 1938 to a remote farm in South Africa. And it relates their story. It is, again, another great epic experience. And then from there, we'll move into a more intimate experience based on a novel, based on a Dutch novel, which has been made into at least 3 or 4 adaptations in different languages. It was originally made in Dutch, then it moved on, and it was made in Italian, and I'll be speaking about the Italian version. It was done in the United States. I don't like to talk about that film, but this one is entitled The Dinner. And this was a Venice Film Favorite, multiple award winner, also in 2014. And it is a story of two families and their children, and an act that their children become involved in that has tremendous repercussions and threatens to tear these families apart. It raises questions about how we teach our children and what would we do in the face of what happens in the film. And we also have a film based on a great novel, Promise at Dawn, written by Romain Gary, if you're familiar with him, another award-winning novelist. And it's his story of coming of age. Promise at Dawn was a worldwide bestseller. And this film is a biopic based on that novel. Growing up Jewish in France, fighting in the war, and an interesting relationship between he and his mother. In November, we moved to Turkey, a film called Bliss. Again, a story of Turkey today, a story that deals with honor killing, and a young girl who is the victim of rape. And because she is, her family wants her killed. But then again, something else happens. And this story becomes not just a journey, a road story, but a contrast between tradition and modernity, urban and rural, all the while refusing to settle for easy answers. It is a marvelous film, marvelously acted. And the last two, December, another famous book written by Jack London, which was adapted 2 years ago into an award-winning Italian film entitled Martin Eden, the story of a young Italian self-taught man who rises from the working class with dreams of becoming a writer and marrying into wealth. It deals with the dissatisfactions of working class toil and bourgeois success, leading to his political awakening and great conflict. Again, a masterpiece of film. And finally, we end off, which I always like to end off with, a comedy, a film adapted from a famous French play, which has also been adapted into a number of foreign language films, but the primary one is French. It's entitled What's in a Name? It is the story of a family that gets together one evening for dinner when Vincent, who is very successful and about to become a father, invites them all for dinner and sets off a controversy with what he wants to name the kid. And believe me, it is a wonderful comedy. So there you have it. You up? I see. Good. While I was talking, we see more comments. Wendy, thank you, Wendy Rothfield. Why are so many Holocaust films still forthcoming? Why is a good question, because as I said at the beginning of the film, we will never forget, nor should the world forget. And it is important, to constantly bring this out. And I think it is something that should never stop. I think more importantly, we should be seeing more post-Holocaust films, as I said, more of how we are dealing with children of survivors, with grandchildren, how these families are dealing with it. Okay. I see you sent that away. Yeah. Yes,
I want
Marilyn.
to say one thing to everybody. First of all, we all just loved it, Shelly. Thank you so very much. I just want to make sure everybody knows, please do not register again. Or if you've registered, you've registered. And as far as the films, you will get more information. We will be sending it in our newsletters. For those of you who are friends, you will get the newsletters weekly as you always do. And there will be further information as to how to go about it and continue. So thank you again, Shelly, and I didn't mean to interrupt.
Oh, that's perfectly all right. Thank you. There's one last comment here I think is certainly important. Bonnie Smith said she feels the student's self-worth in the film was elevated, ironically, by observing the self-worth that was stripped from the Holocaust victims, from the children who were victims. Yes, definitely. Great sense of irony there. So some great comments. I invite you all, if you want to, I will put into the chat if it's being directed at everyone, and Marilyn and Hannah can get it to you if you want. I will type in my email address. I send out newsletters frequently or semi-frequently lately, but you can write me if you want to discuss a film, this film, any film, anything. I'm open for discussion, so I will put it in there. It's Cafe Cinematheque @gmail.com.
Shelley, while you're doing that, I want to take issue with one thing that you said.
Sure.
You said that the final film is in December. Not if we have anything to do with it, because yes, we've only scheduled through December, but we're not letting you go after December. So we'll talk more, okay?
I thought we had one on December 22nd, no?
That's true, but then what about January, February?
Yes,
but it's not your final. It's just the final of the series.
We're not stopping in
January.
Yes,
this
December.
particular series.
Okay, that's fine. That we'll accept. I also want to let everyone know that this series is free and open to the public. I think that's an incredibly wonderful thing that our library makes available to our community. If you have friends who would like to come, you don't have to be a member, just come and enjoy the series. We'd love to have you. Tonight was an experiment. Could we have a film club on Zoom? Could we ask people to watch the film on their own and then come together to discuss it with Shelley? I think it's a resounding yes, absolutely. I can't believe we were ever concerned about that. And we can't wait for the next one. So thank you so much, Shelley.
My pleasure. By the way, I just have to tell you, Hannah still has the dog. So I have to be back in January.
Okay. We'll give it back in June. Okay, have a good evening, everyone. We'll see you in September as the song.
Have a happy, healthy New Year in September. Those of you who are celebrating, I'll look forward to seeing you September 22nd. Thank you so much and stay safe.
And also, yes, you can join through the website. You can join the Friends group. We'd love your support. Okay, good night, everyone. And remember, we're recording so you can watch whatever you missed. Okay, good night. Thanks, Shelley.
Thank you. Good night. Thank you.
Bye.